is to focus on Dagger. So to review posta, Dagger posta, and then Dagger strikes, and after Dagger strikes, then look at multiple strikes, so flurries, adopting a concept from the German Myers squares, you'll call Myers square cutting drills for the sword. We're going to use that for Dagger, and there's two specific flurries I'm looking at. And then after that, we'll look at fishing in that context. Depending on the time, we may be able to look at hooking as well. Dagger versus sword and hooking. If people do not have a dagger, a hammer works perfectly well as a dagger substitute, just holding it in a point forward or hammer handle forward configuration. So if you have a training dagger, feel free to use it. For most today, I'll be using the hammer, just for fun. So to start with, we're going to open up. So when you're ready, we'll take whatever training tool we have at hand, and to the center, out, up, down to the side, and cut in. Good. So first and foremost, we'll look at attributes of the dagger. Now, I usually do attributes of the dagger lately because it parallels the parts of the sword part of the scholar test. And for any recruit, I like to test to the scholar test material as a context for the journey that recruits are going through from just starting through to intermediate, advanced, and then scholar test candidates. So, parts of the dagger: point, blade, rondelle, handle, rondelle. Where the point, and I should be using a scholar's dagger when I do this, so maybe I'll do that next time. The edge, the blade on this one is round, of course, because it's a wooden training dagger, so it's symmetrical. But the blades on the historical ones are either two edges, or in some cases you will see a triangular version, right? But anyway, if I was presenting this, I'd say I'd have a steel dagger in my hand, and I'd say we have two edges, and the first 5 to 6 inches, the first half of the blade is sharp, but not razor sharp, sharp enough to cut straps. If you're fighting in armor and you were able to get in to cut somebody's armor straps to make an opening to be able to get in. And the purpose of this is not a slashing weapon, like a sword, right? The purpose of this is a thrusting weapon. So this is where it does the damage. And you'll see in several portions of Fjord Levery's manuscript where he talks about the dangerous dagger. In some cases, he even hints that it's the most dangerous, right? There's a lot of context towards that. It's a shorter weapon, which also means that if you get in close, it's a fast weapon. And 12 inches of this blade, or heck, even 3 or 4 of this inches in this blade, in any of the vital parts of the body can cause your death. Even through armor, right? It's through chainmail, let me be clear. Right? The chainmail and padding that's in those spots where you have to move. So, this is the context in which we drill. We drill these as a medieval weapon that just about everybody had at their hip, at the front, and behind. Armored, unarmored, noble, peasant, mercenary. Pretty well anybody had one of these. And they were deadly, right? And in that context, if you're in a walled city, often they'd have laws prohibiting having a sword at your hip, especially a long sword. You'd have to carry it or have a servant carry it, right? And then for spear, poleaxe, and armor, if you're walking through a walled city in any of those things, there would be questions, right? It's essentially a declaration of war. So I'm going to put this away for now, and we'll have it as a furrow. And I'll go back to the hammer. Just for fun, we'll do a quick analysis of the attributes of the hammer. And this analysis can be done with any object that you pick up, right? If you've got a improvised mace, right? I've just got a little metal piece on the end here just to give it a little bit of weight. If you've got a hammer, if you've got a sword, an axe, a spear, anything, or just a hunk of wood, right? You can pick it up and look at the attributes. So, for the hammer, what attributes do we have? right? With a striking surface at this end, non-lethal, well, unless you hit them hard enough, but still, striking surface. We have a shaft. Mine's about 12 inches, yours looks to be about 18 inches. That's a very nice one. I'd like to get one of those someday, but I'm too cheap. We have striking surfaces on the top. Again, less than lethal, if you will. No spike here, right? But still, face full of this will not do you any good. We have a striking surface at the hammer side. Small, so you have to be precise, right? But you take a crack of that to the side of the temple, or to an elbow, or to a wrist, or to a knee. Again, this is not going to be fun. And then we have spikes. Depending on the hammer, some hammers have straight out spikes. So, for example, this hammer here has a much straighter spike, whereas this one is much more curved, right? So you have different attributes of the spikes. And all of these could be weaponized, right? If you took this and you filed these down to more of a point, right, on a grinder, if you took this and you cut into the head in order to make almost like a meat tenderizer sort of thing, or a couple of prongs, right, maybe split it into 4. So these could be weaponized. But just from the humble hammer, right, we have these attributes. Now we also have the ability to change the grip, right? So now we change the way that it can be used just by changing our grip. Hammer, dagger. Hammer, dagger. Or, if you will, striking with the weight out at the end, which makes it a heavier object, less point friendly, more hit heavy, right? Now we have an object where we can hook one side, to the other side we can block across, like sword and dagger, which we might get to today. And when we're in close, if we push the elbow, we can also hook behind the head, behind the knee, right, into an elbow. We can do all of those things. We could also use them for disarms, right? So if somebody's got a sword, and I've come to the bind, right, and I put a hand on their hand or on their wrist, essentially immobilizing the weapon for a second, I can pull, hook, pull. I can also hook and pull this way, right? I can also come underhind the wrist and pull this way. So those are actions that we don't usually think about and aren't discussed in the Fury of Liberius material. The hooking ability, that's not true. They're not often discussed. So in the poleaxe section, where you have an object similar to this on a 5-foot or 6-foot pole, he does talk about coming down and hooking the leg, right? And you do see in the armored longsword section times where he'll come in around the head, right? Or he'll go to one side of the head or the other side of the head, right, for throws. So that's interesting when you look through Fury of Liberius manuscript and you look for the different aspects that these attributes can be used. Now, having said all that, I did say that we're going to look at dagger posta, dagger strikes, multiple strikes. So let's get into that. First of all, using this as if it was our dagger trainer, we're going to first put it down. The first 3 dagger posta do not involve a dagger. So we have tutto porta de ferro, so full iron gate, which we know from our wrestling section. Then the right hand comes over top and grabs the left wrist. Tutto porta de ferro, doppia, full iron gate, more strength. Then we have the right hand over top of the left hand, loose, not grabbing, open. Tutto porta de ferro, doppia incrociata. So more strength and crossed, right? So let's go through this again. Tutto porta de ferro, full iron gate. Tutto porta de ferro, doppia. So iron gate, more strength. Now you might ask, why the right hand over the left? Or how do you remember right hand over the left? Okay, the left hand defends, grabs the wrist, the right hand does other things. Or we could go to the inside, right? Something comes in, I'm more likely to go to the outside, right? And then push the elbow, and then do other things. Same thing here. Right hand and left. When you block, the left hand grabs, the right hand comes in. You can also go to the outside, right? And then, in that case, it's a little bit more difficult to see the right hand doing other things. I would want to get the left hand onto that elbow and push the elbow and then come in. So, iron gate, doppia, crossed, or incrociata. Now, with the dagger, now we have tutto porta de ferro, come dagger. So full iron gate with dagger. Then we take our left hand into the right. Now we have tutto porta de ferro, doppia, right? Iron gate doubled with dagger. Now he shows it here, right? And then we take the dagger around. We have tutto porta de ferro incrociata, doppia incrociata. So full iron gate doubled and crossed. So this one is not shown in the manuscript, right? This one, Brian Macklemore, the provost of Emma Toronto, shows us where he takes iron gate doubled and crossed, and he says with the dagger doubled, which is shown in the manuscript, that's a direct correlation to doppia, doubled, and then doubled and crossed is a direct correlation to doubled and crossed without the dagger, right? You can see you just put the dagger in place, there it is. So then he takes iron gate, non-doubled, and he says the direct correlation to that is with a dagger, non-doubled, right? So that gives us, even though 5 are shown in the manuscript, that gives us 6 to show in the scholar test, keeping in mind that iron gate with dagger is not shown. It might be in the text. I'll have to check that. If it's in the text, then we're fine. We can just say yes, it's in the text. But anyway, from the context of the test, these are the things you have to keep in mind. Now, a brief discussion about these posta. Any of them that are non-doubled, so tutto porta ferro with dagger, or iron gate, those are the only 2 that are. Those are, Fiore Liberi says, they are better out of armor, but weaker in armor, right? Now, our interpretation of that is that they have a longer reach, therefore, out of armor, you want to have that longer reach to keep that weapon away from you. But in armor, you need the doubled posta. So doubled and crossed, and doppia, and then crossed. So all of the doubled posta those are all shorter but stronger. So if you're in armor and somebody comes in and you get a little hit on the armor, you're fine. You don't care about incidentals as much. But if you're not in armor, 2 inches into your chest cavity could ruin your whole day. So you want to have a longer posta. So that's a discussion about posta. Now let's get into strikes. First of all, we're going to have our hammer grip, our point forward grip, let's call it that. And we're going to do mandrita. So we bring our point forward and then strike using our true time. And we're going to have our left hand there so we get used to having it ready to punch or fish. We're going to do 5 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if you look in the manuscript about the mandrita strikes, it's not a direct angle, it's a range of angles that Fiore Liberi talks about for each of the strikes. So, in reality, you could see this strike. You could see it try to come under the armpit, right? If you're pushing somebody's arm and then striking the armpit, you could see it come under the ribs. So even though it's coming from the right, it might be coming underneath, just under the ribs. So you have this range of action. Now, Fiore Liberi does say below the elbow is not advised. If you go below the elbow, they can punch you in the head, they can hit you in the head. And the other thing is that it gets shorter and shorter. So here, I have that range of action, that distance, right? If I go down a little bit, here, it's shorter. And if I go right into the ribs, that's a very short action. So here I've got a long action, here I've got a shorter action. So I look at this as being initial actions are long, And then once we're in close, and then coming around, now we're close enough we can do the short actions. So that's the context for the flurries we'll be doing later. So now we're going to do 5 at this angle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we'll do 5 under the ribs. So we're going to do 5 at this angle. Keeping in mind that I do not advise this as an initial strike. This is simply getting ready for the flurries we're going to do in a minute. One more. Now it does give us options in terms of the flicks, so changing the angle. So we can start with a provocation or a feint on one line and then switch to another line. So we can come in, and it looks like we're coming in this line, and then we change to that line. Right? Now we could arguably start low, so it looks like we're going low, and then switch to a high line. Right? However, that's less convincing because that's such a short reach. I think I'd have to sell the long action first and say, look at me, I'm coming in, and then push the elbow, fish, and then strike. And that's specifically what Fury Levari says with a disarm. If I come in and you try to take my elbow off to the side for disarm, Fury Levari says change, bring the point up, and come around. Okay? Now let's do the reversing. So left foot forward, coming across the body, striking, and then recover. We're going to do 5 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, similar to the other side, we have a range of different heights we can use here. We can strike here, we can strike under the armpit, there, we can strike under the ribs, here, right? So, 1, let's do under the armpit first. 1, and we'll double up as we exit. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we'll come under the ribs. 1, 2. Now to avoid the urge to come over, I'd still go underneath. That allows you to clear out and take the left hand off. 3, 4, last 1, 5. Now again, I would not use a low reversey as an initial strike. I would always, in fact, I wouldn't use a reversey at all as an initial strike. This is so ludicrously easy to block, let alone this, let alone this. Just one hand on the elbow and you're done. So all of the reverses I see as follow-on secondary actions after a fendente or after a mandrita, right? So that brings us to fendente. Let's do a centerline fendente attack. Up the line, 1. And then double, and then out. Let's do 5 more of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I forgot how to count to 5. Now, we could draw the analogy here and say, well, we can strike in, we can strike through, but he doesn't say anything about different heights. I think he talks about the target being the top of the head down to the chest, but down to the elbow or chest level. So in here, so striking through the eye, through a slit, striking the throat, striking the upper chest, but in here, nah, not so much. Now, having said that, let's flip to forward grip. So now we have Satani. We're going to bring our hand here so we're facing forward, because now we're going to do our Satani strikes here. So our point's going to come out, our left hand's going to come on and out, and then double up and back. Now initially we're going to aim at the belly button, straight at the center. That's your strongest attack, right? 1. And we'll do 5 more. 2. 3. 4. 5. Good. Now we're going to come to the right, so we're going to come here. 2. And again, under the ribs. And I'm forgetting to double up. Now we're going to go under the right armpit. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. Now we're going to come over to this side. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. Now we're going to come under this armpit. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. Good. I'm just going to stop the video because I forgot to stop it earlier. I have to stop and start it every once in a while because of